The Egyptian president rejects Palestinian displacement from Gaza. An Israeli strike kills more than 20 in Gaza. And Trump announces the end of US strikes targeting the Houthis. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has stated that Egypt is making intensive efforts to enhance security and stability, aiming for a ceasefire in Gaza. This came during his meeting with Greek President in Athens. Al-Sisi reiterated Egypt's refusal to displace Palestinians from Gaza and emphasized the strong historical ties with Greece, highlighting opportunities for cooperation and joint efforts on illegal immigration. An Israeli strike near a restaurant and market in Gaza City has killed at least 23 people, including women and children, according to local health authorities. Casualties were washed away on pickups and carts, while ambulances raced through shattered streets. A woman in tears carried a baby from the scene with 2 young children by her side. Witnesses described scenes of panic and devastation, with the area heavily damaged by the strike. Local hospitals have been overwhelmed with the influx of injured civilians, many in critical condition. There has been no immediate comment from Israel regarding the attack yet. Hamas official Bassem Naim has stated that Hamas insists on reaching a comprehensive agreement to end the ongoing war with Israel and Gaza, which has now lasted 19 months. Naim said that there are desperate attempts ahead for the US President Donald Trump's visit to the region, involving ongoing starvation and threats of military escalation, to impose a partial agreement without guarantees for a truce end to the conflict. Six European countries have expressed opposition to any attempts to alter Gaza's population dynamics, according to the AFP. This comes in response to an announcement by Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, stating that Tel Aviv plans to relocate all residents of Gaza to the southern part of the Strip. The move follows a decision by Israel's Security Cabinet to approve an expanded military operation in Gaza, which includes plans for complete control of the area and supports the idea of voluntary migration from its inhabitants. French President Emmanuel Macron has stated that the humanitarian situation in Gaza has reached unprecedented critical levels, emphasizing the urgent need for humanitarian aid distribution. During a meeting with new German Chancellor Friedrich Merz at the Élysée Palace, Macron acknowledged that Israel's right to combat Hamas, but deemed it unacceptable for Israel to disregard any regulations. He also announced the establishment of a joint defense council between France and Germany. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa has declared the Gaza Strip a famine zone. In a press conference on Gaza's worsening humanitarian crisis, Mustafa urged the UN to treat Gaza as a famine zone and activate its mechanisms. He also called for the implementation of a UN resolution banning the use of starvation as a weapon war and for urgent action from all UN member states to address the crisis. Mustafa vowed that the government would continue its efforts to combat aggression and famine while working with the international community to save lives and aid recovery. The World Health Organization (WHO) has reported that nearly 10,000 children in Gaza have been affected by severe malnutrition, with approximately 1,400 requiring immediate medical intervention. The World Health Organization warned that children who reach the stage of severe malnutrition without proper treatment face a high risk of death. The organization also highlighted the challenges posed by restricted access to Palestinians and the repeated displacement of families, which has hindered the completion of treatment for 1 in 5 affected children. The humanitarian crisis is deepening in Gaza amid a worsening blockade and intensified military operations. The United Nations is warning of an imminent catastrophe as Israel moves to overhaul the aid system and expand its offensive.
The United Nations has rejected an Israeli plan to restructure humanitarian aid delivery in Gaza, warning it violates key humanitarian principles and risks worsening the crisis. Speaking in Geneva, UN humanitarian spokesperson Jens Lerke said the proposal fails to meet the principles of impartiality, neutrality, and independence. He described the plan as one that seeks to further control and restrict supplies, at a time when Gaza's humanitarian situation is dire. The Israeli proposal follows cabinet approval for a broader military offensive against Hamas that could see the full seizure of Gaza and direct Israeli control over aid distribution. Under the plan, aid would bypass UN agencies and be handed over to private contractors in the southern city of Rafah. Human rights organizations and aid groups have sounded the alarm. The International Committee of the Red Cross says community kitchens serving thousands of families are days away from shutting down. UN agencies warn that the blockade, now entering its 9th week, is pushing Gaza toward famine. The Hamas-run media office says more than 70,000 children have been hospitalized for malnutrition and at least 3,500 children alive face imminent death by starvation. Israel has blocked nearly all humanitarian supplies since March 2nd, citing concerns over aid falling into the hands of Hamas. Since the start of the war on Gaza, Israel's campaign has killed more than 52,000 Palestinians, most of them civilians, according to Gaza health officials. The European Union has voiced concern over Israel's planned escalation, warning it will only deepen the humanitarian disaster. The EU urged Israel to lift the blockade and resume negotiations for a ceasefire. Despite mounting international pressure, including warnings of famine and calls for a ceasefire, Israel has maintained the blockade. Efforts to broker a renewed truce repeatedly stalled, leaving civilians trapped in worsening conditions with limited access to food, water, or medical aid.
Moving on to Yemen, where Oman has mediated a ceasefire agreement between Yemenis Houthis and the United States. According to Omani Foreign Minister, neither side will target the other, including U.S. vessels in the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The announcement was shared on social media and retweeted by U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced an end to American airstrikes targeting the Houthis in Yemen. The decision comes after the Iran-backed group agreed to stop attacking vital shipping lanes in the Middle East. Speaking from the Oval Office during a meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, Trump said that the Houthis had requested the U.S. cease its bombing campaign and pledged not to target U.S. or allied vessels. The president voiced confidence in the group's commitment to halt hostilities.
take their word. They say they will not.
US President Donald Trump has stated that Iran must not be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon, as the United States and Iran are set to resume nuclear negotiations. Trump, who withdrew from the US from the 2015 nuclear deal, has repeatedly threatened military action against Iran if a deal is not reached. That comes as the fourth round of talks between the two countries is expected to take place in Oman's capital on May the 11th. The negotiations had initially been scheduled for May 3rd in Rome, but were postponed due to logistical reasons, according to mediators in Oman. The resumption of talks comes as both sides seek to resolve the long-standing nuclear dispute.
Choose to go a different route, it's going to be a very sad thing, and it's something we don't want to have to do, but we have no choice. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
The Iranian Foreign Ministry has stated that Tehran has not requested direct talks with Washington. Additionally, they denied rumors about a potential meeting between the Iranian and American presidents.
فضای عمومی و فضای رسانه‌ای مذاکره نمی‌کنیم. اما اونچه که مشخص است مواضع اصولی جمهوری اسلامی ایران در رابطه با حق ملت ایران برای استفاده صلح‌آمیز از انرژی هسته‌ای.
And now we move on to the latest developments in India and Pakistan. The Indian Armed Forces has announced that they launched a targeted operation against what they described as terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan-proper Pakistani-controlled Jammu and Kashmir, ensuring no Pakistani military installations were hit. They specifically targeted 9 sites in Operation Sindoor, executing precise strikes on what they claim were terrorist camps. The Indian Army emphasized that its actions were calculated and not escalatory. In response, the Pakistani military confirmed that India struck 3 locations with missiles, vowing to retaliate at their chosen time and place. Pakistan accused India of targeting civilian infrastructure and claims to have shot down 5 Indian aircrafts. The Pakistani military also shelled border areas along the line of control in the disputed Kashmir region, causing damages and casualties in Indian-controlled areas. The spokesperson for the India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party has stated that the Indian Army forces targeted 9 Pakistani sites in a precise military operation aimed at dismantling terrorist camps. She described the operation as a response to last week's Kashmir attack that resulted in many casualties. She also affirmed that India did not attack Pakistani civilians but acted to defend its sovereignty. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has stated that the Pakistani military is responding to Indian attacks, asserting that the country's right to retaliate. In a post on X, he condemned India's strikes on 5 locations, promising a strong response. He emphasized national unity and high morale among the Pakistani people and military. Pakistani officials also reported that the Air Force shot down 2 Indian fighter jets. And for more analysis on the situation, we move on to Salma Al-Fayya in our newsroom. Salma?
Thank you, Rana. And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the editor-in-chief of El Shuruq newspaper and the Egyptian senator, Mr. Ahmed Hussein. Welcome, sir, to Qnews. What are the main reasons for India's Operation Sindoor, and do you think New Delhi risks provoking war by pursuing this approach?
Peace be upon you all. Naturally, the clear reason up till this moment but naturally we have the main reason, which is the Indian-Pakistani conflict since the beginning of the Kashmir problem and the separation of Pakistan from Hind in 1940s and following in 2019 till today. Up till this moment, the conflict, I think, is still limited. It is in a very limited war. Thus, the two parties will maintain, restrain, and to respect the international calls, or indulge the two sides in an open war. There's a national far-right party in India that similar to the governing nation in Israel. Therefore, they wanted to gain more points within India. Is he going to continue in such attacks? I think at this moment it is in a very decisive attacks, and as India has a very nuclear and advanced weapon.
Sir, the Pakistani Prime Minister has labeled the Indian strikes as an act of war and pledged retaliation. How do you foresee the magnitude and extent of this expected response?
The Pakistani response has already started by striking Indian site, and managed to hit India, announced that the attacks led the death of civilians, and therefore the operations up till this moment goes in the title of a very limited confrontations, and to blame each party as everyone is just trying to do the retaliation.
Major global powers like the US, Russia, and China have not engaged in substantial diplomatic efforts to ease the tension. Do you think the situation potentially allows for further escalation between two new nations?
Comprehensive war is going to be the Middle East and the Arab region, as this matter will allow to Israel of killing and another area in the region, considering conflict attract the attentions away from the Arab-Israeli conflict, and I think even the major powers even they condemn this matter, but it might be for their interest to have a great conflict between two nuclear powers, and therefore make this matter to President Trump to think of the state of calm worldly and to ease his unilateral dimension executive orders concerning the tariffs, and the other side in the EU for their interest to keep it ignited and to withdraw the attentions into other areas from the world.
Sir, the conflicts between India and Pakistan have resulted in considerable civilian casualties and damage to infrastructure on both sides. How do you assess the humanitarian impact of this serious escalation?
Such escalation, its significance of the igniting the conflict between Pakistan and India to be nuclear. The each civilian is injured and fell down is a very significant matter that should require sympathy. But each side is trying to show that the other party's attacks targeted civilians or worship houses, as took place in Pakistan by showing one of the holy places. And therefore, up till this moment, we cannot just talk about the great magnitude of casualties, but the most dangerously that this conflict could be expanded to more than that.
From Cairo, that was the editor-in-chief of Al-Shuruq newspaper and the Egyptian senator, Mr. Ahmed Hussein. Thank you, sir, so much for joining us here on Q News. And now we go back to Rana Al-Assas in our studio.
Thank you so much, Salma. And we move on to Conservative leader Friedrich Merz has officially succeeded Social Democrat Olaf Scholz as German Chancellor in a ceremony at the German Chancellery. Merz, who faced an unprecedented 2 attempts to secure the position, expressed gratitude for the trust placed in him by the German Parliament after a surprise defeat in the first round of voting. Outgoing Chancellor Scholz welcomed Merz, emphasizing the need for swift action in the current turbulent times.
Die dieses Amt mit sich bringt, sie ist mir sehr bewusst. Ich nehme diese Verantwortung mit Demut, aber, meine Damen und Herren, auch mit Entschlossenheit und mit Zuversicht an.
Germany's new Chancellor Friedrich Merz has met France's President Emmanuel Macron in Paris on his first official trip abroad. Merz vowed upon taking office to be a very European Chancellor, as he is scheduled to travel to Poland later in the day. Merz and Macron are hoping to give the relationship fresh impetus at a crucial time, as both former US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin continue to exert pressure on the EU, prompting a re-evaluation of its security strategy. Former South Korean Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has reaffirmed his opposition to ousted President Yoon Suk-yeol's controversial martial law decree, while calling for unity within the ruling People Power Party (PPP) as he vies for its presidential nomination. Han, who recently entered the race despite the selection of former Labour Minister Kim Moon-soo, criticized the imposition of martial law, which was later ruled unconstitutional by the top court. He also expressed concern over the opposition's frequent use of impeachment, pointing to more than 30 cases brought forward. He stated that a united campaign is essential and pledged to abide by the party's final decision on its nominee. United States Vice President J.D. Vance has stated that the Trump administration aimed to establish guidelines for direct talks between Russia and Ukraine, which he deemed essential for resolving the conflict. Vance, which requested concessions excessive, he expressed a moderate optimism regarding the possibility of ending the conflict.
In order to end the conflict. We think they're asking for too much.
That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. The Egyptian president rejects Palestinian displacement from Gaza. An Israeli strike kills more than 20 in Gaza. And Trump announces the end of US airstrikes targeting the Houthis. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching. This ends our transmission for Q News for today, and we meet you again tomorrow at 4 p.m. local time. Thank you very much for watching.